There was a moment in your life, maybe more than one, when everything became quiet in the wrong way. Not peaceful, quiet. The kind of quiet where the noise leaves, but the weight stays. Where plans fall apart, voices disappear, and you realize that the path you were walking no longer exists. Not because you failed, but because life moved it out from under your feet without asking for permission. No one prepares you for that moment. People talk about success, growth, motivation, discipline, but they rarely talk about the in-between. The space where identity dissolves, where you no longer know who you are becoming, only that who you were no longer fits. This is not a breakdown. This is a crossing. At first, the mind panics. It looks for old maps, old habits, old versions of yourself that once worked, but they don't work anymore. And that's when fear shows up, not because you are weak, but because you are standing at the edge of something unfamiliar. The unknown always feels like danger before it reveals itself as possibility. Most people try to escape this phase. They rush to rebuild something, anything, just to avoid the discomfort of not knowing. They fill the silence with noise. They trade depth for distraction. But the ones who grow, the ones who change at a fundamental level, do something different. They stay. Staying does not mean giving up. It means resisting the urge to run back to what is comfortable but no longer true. It means allowing the old structure to collapse completely instead of patching it just enough to survive. Because survival is not the same as transformation. In this space, life begins to teach you quietly, not through motivation, quotes, or external validation, but through pressure, through repetition, through moments that ask the same question again and again. Will you abandon yourself, or will you learn how to stand without certainty? Strength is built here, not the loud kind, not the kind that demands recognition. The silent kind, the kind that develops when no one is watching, when there is no guarantee of reward, when effort feels disconnected from outcome. This kind of strength does not come from confidence. It comes from commitment. There will be days in this phase when you feel like you are moving backward. Days when doubt is heavier than hope. Days when getting through the day feels like an achievement no one will ever applaud. These days matter more than you realize. They are teaching you endurance, patience, and self. At some point, something shifts. Not externally, internally. You stop asking, when will this end? And start asking, what is this shaping in me? That question changes everything, because now the struggle is no longer meaningless. It becomes purposeful. You begin to notice that you are less reactive, less desperate for approval, less dependent on outcomes to feel stable. The chaos outside no longer dictates the state inside as easily as it once did. You are becoming grounded, not because life is easier, but because you are deeper. This is where many people misunderstand growth. They think growth looks like expansion, more success, more clarity, more confidence. But real growth often looks like contraction first, like being stripped down, like losing identities that once defined you, like standing without labels. When you lose an identity, it feels like losing yourself. But what you are actually losing is the limitation of who you thought you were allowed to be. The collapse is not punishment. It is preparation. Life does not break you randomly. It applies pressure precisely where rigidity exists. And where rigidity breaks, flexibility is born. Where certainty collapses, awareness expands. Where ego dissolves, resilience forms. Eventually, you begin to move again. Slowly, carefully, not driven by urgency, but guided by clarity. You stop chasing outcomes and start choosing alignment. You don't move faster, you move truer. You begin to understand that motivation is unreliable, but discipline rooted in self-respect is not. That waiting for confidence keeps you stuck, but acting with integrity builds confidence over time. That progress is not loud, it is consistent. There will still be fear. Growth does not eliminate fear. It changes your relationship with it. Fear becomes information instead of an obstacle, a signal instead of a stop sign. You no longer obey it blindly. This phase teaches you how to stand alone without feeling lonely, how to move forward without applause, how to trust yourself without needing constant reassurance. These are not small lessons. They are foundational. One day, you will realize that you are no longer asking for permission to become who you are. You will notice that your decisions feel quieter, but stronger. That your boundaries are firmer, but kinder. That your presence carries weight without force. The version of you that survives this phase is not flashy. It does not need to prove anything. It knows what it can endure, and that knowledge cannot be taken away. You will look back and see that this was the chapter where you learned how to stay grounded when everything was unstable, where you learned how to choose yourself without becoming selfish, where you learned how to keep going without losing your soul. This story is not about winning. It is about becoming unshakable, not because life stopped testing you, but because you learned how to meet pressure without collapsing. And if you are in this phase right now, feeling like everything is uncertain, heavy, or unfinished, know this: you are not lost. You are not late. You are not failing. You are being rebuilt at a level that cannot be rushed. Stay.